Grayson Earle is a contemporary artist and activist from the United States, currently working in Berlin. His work deals with the role that digital technologies and networks play in protest and political agency. He is known for his guerrilla video projections as a member of the Illuminator, a guerrilla video projection collective, and Bail Block, a computer program that posts bail for low-income people. His art and research has been presented at the Whitney Museum of American Art, KW Institute for Contemporary Art, and the Singapore Art Museum. He negotiates past and present, speculative as well as science-based socioeconomic topics. Thereby, he thinks about the future in all its potentialities, but with an awareness of planetary crisis. In order to sketch future scenarios, he approaches subcultural practices, different forms of hacking, DIY, and calls for self-organization. His work contextualizes the space in which it happens and often integrates people standing outside of the art world. His work has been shown at KW Berlin, Palais de Tokyo, Istanbul Biennale, among others. So we're delighted to have these two from Berlin and grateful to 1014 for allowing that to happen. And Dr. Tal Linzen will join the conversation as our expert. And none of us pretend to be experts, do we, on AI?
I pretend, yeah.
Okay, I'll let you continue to pretend. Tal is an associate professor of linguistics and data science at NYU and a research scientist at Google. He studies the connections between human and artificial intelligence, focusing on language. What can AI systems teach us about humans? How can we advance AI using what we know about humans? Before NYU, he held positions at Johns Hopkins University and École Normale Supérieure in Paris. He has received awards from Google and the National Science Foundation. Tal bends my mind in unexpected ways, so I'm delighted he could be here today. I'm going to be, and you got to correct me when I say something wrong. So this is our AI in the play. This is our AI robot. And so it does many things that AI can do. It analyzes facial recognition. It processes language. It talks back. It prompts. And so what's interesting, I want to talk a little bit about the processing of language, because that's one of Tal's specialties. And just to define a little definition, provide a little definition, natural language understanding is a field of artificial intelligence that allows computers to comprehend and interpret human language in a meaningful and useful way. So I got that definition from AI. So I asked AI to define itself, which is kind of where we are, I think. And so natural language understanding is, the AI is trained on things called large language models. So these large language models. So my first question is, did you train your AI on a large language model?
It utilizes some pre-trained models, and it also uses some existing large language models, but it's mostly using like pose detection systems and these models that have been trained and open sourced by researchers before us.
So you're kind of hacking some of them.
Using
existing.
Yeah. There's a lot of creative misuse of technology, I think, going on.
That's right. Yeah.
So these data sets so you get these pre-trained data sets that are large, right, and that have already been made. Pre-trained, you mean they've been trained by these large language bunches.
Yeah. Or they've been trained by, like in the case of pose detection, they've been trained not by language models, but by videos of people moving in space, and then humans going in and labeling where their knees and feet and elbows are and stuff, and like doing that with thousands of hours of video, so that then the model is capable of taking a new video and outputting where the knees and ankles and feet are, estimating that pose over live video, for example.
So are you guys delighted when it glitches and stuff?
I mean, it's really great as well to see various shows of that. This was our second one, and it's like so different than the first one. And that's of course because like that's because the audience is different. Like every time people are coming into space, it's a kind of like a total different chemistry, but as well like the technology behaves in different ways. So like the outcomes are as well really different. So I'm really curious as well to see how it will change like over time, and of course like when technology or like as well people are surprising me. That's like something exciting because like I have the feeling this is like the whole thing is quite unpredictable, and maybe we are relying on technology a lot and kind of like think that this is predictable. But yeah, I mean like today I saw like we saw at least it's like really doing has its own life and is yeah, sometimes hard to control even.
Well, I was, just from my point of view, I was very worried about getting audience members to offer to act. Extremely worried from my experience. People don't like to get on. And my hypothesis is because technology is kind of inviting them in, we're used to being prompted by technology now. It's actually easier to get people on stage.
I mean, I'm really curious as well about the people on stage today, kind of like how they felt, kind of like interacting with this technology or with this robot. Because like I discovered by myself, like how I interacting with technology lately, especially with ChatGPT, changed so much. It was kind of like so fast, like a process. So just like asking random questions or things I know, changing to kind of like really supporting me in all sorts of life situations, and I kind of like I'm really starting kind of to trust this technology. And then when I thought back, I thought, okay, this was a really fast progress or like a process that my relation changed so much to this program, and goes right now really in her direction of this film.
How many people use ChatGPT or something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All the time.
That's really come into our lives, like in a matter of months, really, right? Yeah.
And then I just heard that from you say that you kind of like felt quite fast having a connection to the robot. You even gave it. It's really interesting because like for us, the machine didn't have a name so far but you said it's like prompt. So right now I guess that's the name of the robot. You name it. I mean that's great, and you said that you started kind of like having a relationship to that, and I think that's really interesting. Kind of like what does it need for us, kind of like to trust something or to start kind of like having a relationship.
It needs to be adorable, and this is adorable when it talks to you. It really is. And it doubles as a dinosaur in Jurassic Park. So yeah. So Tal. So when I first started talking to you 5 years ago about this subject, and I love having conversations with Tal and reading his work, and I have, for a moment, I have a glimmer that I understand it, and then it evaporates. But then I go back to it and have that moment again. But you talked about the large language models and how there might be limits to them. But we're still in the same framework, right? We're still in large language models. And are we ever going to hit the wall of data? There's no more data, or the Chinese have all the data, or I don't know.
I think we already have hit the wall of the data. Just we give these systems everything that we've ever written, and there's no more left to give them. Really? Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, there's like probably some little bits and pieces of writing left somewhere in the dark corners of the internet that haven't made it into ChatGPT, but it's really like huge amounts of text, and often what looks like creative language use is just retrieving text that's very similar to what you're supposed to send to the user. So it's like in terms of whether we've reached the limit of the technology, I don't think so. I think we keep finding ways to do more with less with this technology. So maybe if you asked me 5 years ago, I would say that I'm not as optimistic about this technology, and here we are 5 years later, and it surprised me and a lot of other people.
So the data can be limited, but the what can be done with the data interface with the machine is not so limited.
Yeah, we keep finding ways to get the models to be more sophisticated by basically talking to themselves and figuring things out on their own with the same amount of training data. It's kind of almost magical. It's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect, but we keep finding ways to make progress.
Okay, so I wasn't going to get to this till later, but I just can't, after that, resist asking. So, another definition I got from AI was about what singularity is. Singularity refers to a point in space-time, which I try to understand with my astrophysics advisors, where space-time to a point in space-time where physical laws break down, often characterized by infinite density or curvature. In the context of technology, specifically AI, it describes a hypothetical future where technology, especially AI, rapidly advances beyond human comprehension and control. So, is that something we have to be scared about, and are artists' attempts to kind of undermine the machine any help?
Yeah, I think we should be moderately scared of that because what's happening, the idea of the singularity is that we are developing AI systems that are becoming their own scientists, and they're coming up with new ideas to build even better AI systems without our intervention. They're not quite there yet, but it might happen in a few years. And then the process can happen extremely rapidly, like have this AI systems that develops an even better AI system, and every 5 seconds there's a new one. And a few days later you have the smartest thing that has ever existed. I don't know how likely that is, but it doesn't seem impossible.
Oh, I was hoping for a different answer.
Yeah. I hope that we can still find a way to control these systems, even if they're more capable and intelligent than us. That I'm a little bit more optimistic about.
So how, you guys are both, I would argue, are artist activists, and so how do you think your work like this starts to, what is it generating for you in terms of this our relationship to the machine, or our relationship to technology? And
Yeah. Like our first idea was that we want to reverse the relationship between the machine and human, because usually we tell the machine what to do, or we ask the machine, we ask ChatGPT, or we prompt something, and then an AI system or a machine does what we tell the machine to do. And we wanted to reverse this, that humans are in this role of getting prompted and doing something, and then we took it from there and thought, okay, in which context could we work with that? Maybe it could be theater, because we thought, okay, theater is something humans are doing, and it's about kind of like people coming together in a space. Thought about kind of like the social aspect of having relationships to other people is like something quite human. Of course, we have like relationships as well, like to other entities, but we wanted to focus on that. And then we took it from there, and we're like searching for content or kind of for peace. And then Jurassic Park, like quite late in this process, crossed our mind, because we thought, and I think this is really interesting, that this is like a quite old film, but it speaks so much about technology, and not maybe kind of like how technology will develop, but about kind of like how humans think about technology. So there's kind of like this warning, and there's kind of like this dystopian future which is on the horizon. And I'm not sure if we will end up there, but this is at least kind of like what we think about it. When we think about like singularity, I think it's as well really interesting that these ideas are quite old as well. So they're kind of like this robot laws, for example. So before actually, or like when robots were mentioned more in literature, So people came already up with kind of like certain laws. So robots should always kind of should not harm people and should serve people and stuff like this. And I think this is interesting that we find already quite some interesting thoughts about technology in the past, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's also fun. I mean, I think it's good if it can like aid in the social fabric as well. Like to not lose sight of like that we what's important is each other. And like it's funny because back there's like 5 people in a booth and there's a technological system that also kind of relies on people like passing stuff around and like talking to each other. And then there's people on stage who are now like there's a relationship between them. And I think it's like any technology, like a knife is super great if it's in the hands of a doctor and then there's a social fabric which provides free healthcare to everyone. Like these sorts of things, I think are the sorts of questions that we're interested in. It's not like AI is going to be awful or whatever, but like the potentials are all social in nature.
And I think we are quite often intimidated by technology, and that's as well like nothing new as well. Like people were always intimidated by technology and say it's okay. This is right now the end of the world. I don't know, letterpress or trains and whatever. So this is nothing new. But I think probably as you said, so maybe we need to have like a certain attention about it. Definitely not only since singularity, but with all technology comes kind of like social changes and societies are changing, and some people profit from that, and some other people might lose their jobs. And I think it's like on us kind of like to care of each other, that kind of like people who lose their jobs are as well then protected, or that we kind of like see together as a society how we can kind of like deal with this changes. And I think, but on the other hand, I mean, like there's this end scene where the robot talks to you and kind of like, and maybe we admire the whole time this technology, but then the kind of like as well like this switch or this reverse. So the robot actually reminds you for being alive, and then thinks out loud, kind of like what it sees, what is so nice about being alive, and it's not like that's at least what the robot says. It's not perfection, but like trying and aiming for something. And I think this is like something which maybe helps us, that is this way of kind of like trying and maybe as well like failing and like searching is like something quite wonderful. And
Yeah, the piece, and it'll be up on our website, so you can look at it. But at the end, the robot gives this very, what I would call it a romantic speech about what it is to be alive. So I'd argue the artists have this it's a romantic take on the possibilities of being alive, and I love that. But what I'm interested in is this issue of there is this threat with the technology, and we have to remind it of each other, and we have to be careful of the job and separate it. So, I mean, where's the balance then with this concentration of power in certain technology companies that own the AI technology? How does that work? How do we work that out? Is that a problem? Or how do we work that out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is a problem, even as someone who benefits from it in some way, from the concentration of power. I think that we listen to the tech companies a lot more than we should, and I think that as a society we have the responsibility to take control of the technology and regulate it. And there's just this attempt, I don't know if people are familiar with it, but there's like a new attempt to ban state regulation of AI in the United States. So the only regulation could be federal. And there's arguments on both sides of the debate there, but it's there's a lot of financial interest there. There's a lot of very big companies that stand to become a lot richer if there's less regulation. So we need to be very mindful of that. And one thing that is the technology that's the dominant technology. We've talked about the large language models. Right now, it's a big capital investment. It's like you need billions of dollars to develop a good model. So the only actors that can do it are those big companies. And like, what does that mean? Like maybe we need to come together as a society and invest money in an alternative to those big models, those big companies. Through nonprofits or the government, or to the extent that you can rely on the government to do anything these days. Yeah, so it's risky that there's so much concentration of power because it's such like these big, expensive projects.
And I mean, I think this is as well like a point, like a lot of these companies, they pretend that they are kind of like coming up with this science, that this is kind of like this is what they just like found, but they are building up on kind of like a history, they're building up on kind of like university or kind of like sciences, which is not funded by them. It's kind of like funded by a lot of other people and from, I don't know, tax money and stuff like this. So I think this is like something which is as well, they're as well like questioning these narratives, that this kind of like this belongs to them as well, like the data they're using and stuff like this. It's not like something which belongs to them, but it belongs to us because like we produce this data.
Yeah, and that's also, I mean, there's a way of looking at AI in terms of it being like the largest collaborative human project ever made in that sense, because it is trained on all of the things that we have written, you know? And I think like this also relates to this idea of like, is all the data already there? Like, yes, it kind of already has access to that, but then there are also questions around like what, you know, OpenAI or whatever chooses to like select and what they choose to like allow us to ask and not to ask and so on. And I think there's like this larger problem of technology companies, or like, I guess, you know, capital by extension, like trying to impose a sort of coherence on the world. You know, like Facebook is a good example of like, this is now the way that we relate to each other. And now AI is like, this is now how we have access, you know, to this information. And I think there's like a real worry that kind of, if that's now the way that we search for information, then like the contours of that data are set, right? And so like escaping that becomes like a really important task. Otherwise, knowledge will shrink. It can only shrink if it's like incestuous in nature, that's all we have access to, you know?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the environmental costs of AI, just because it's a concern for a lot of artists. And I just wanted to broach that a bit. And Tal, you're sort of, that's something your community is concerned about.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a lot of concerns with AI and how we manage it as a society, but the environmental one is actually not a big concern for me. I think that that's overblown. It's a bit of almost like a trope. I mean, it's not that there is no environmental cost to there's environmental cost to anything, but it's not is dwarfed by, you know, flying or even
Meat consumption.
Yeah, meat consumption, exactly. No, it's really like it's orders of magnitude smaller than that. So I would not put a lot of emphasis on that. I think that the other issues are a lot more important to focus on that we've talked about: the concentration of power, the fact that AI reflects certain values that are aligned with capital and not other values. Those are the things that we should worry about, in my view.
That's encouraging.
I mean, there's only 10 things to worry about, not 11. Great.
Yeah. So anything you want to ask each other? And I have one last question.
I had a question actually about, often when you see AI in art, it's like, it uses this AI voice, or like it's comically, you know, like, I mean, obviously we can generate a voice that sounds very natural, but nevertheless you chose to really highlight the computer-ness of the computer, right? So yeah. What's the thought behind that?
I mean, I think like both of us, when we do work with or about technology, we are kind of like using as well like certain stereotypes or like tropes and stuff like the things which we relate to, or like maybe they like as well a little bit like fallen out of time. So they seem a little bit more from a cyberpunk universe than from our world, because this is, I think, how we think as well about technology, and how probably how we were like introduced for the first time about AI, like in Matrix or robots or something like this, and because this is kind of like an or the realm we are operating is kind of like this like the realm of art. So there's kind of like everything in a way allowed, and it's like we are doing like aesthetic experiences. So kind of like people when they come in and interact. So this aesthetic experience is kind of like which stands in the forefront. It is why how certain decisions are following then this, and then I think kind of like certain decisions are intentional, or really thinking about that, and then like certain decisions are as well just coming up, and maybe we understand, or like at least I'm understanding them later. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also, I think, can be very helpful to have some things, rely on these tropes, so that there's like a pillar in the ground for everyone to understand, and then you can go like absolutely batshit crazy with everything else. I also have a question for you, I guess. It's a rare opportunity to have an expert to ask these things to. I find I'm a bit skeptical of certain claims that get made. Like even the term neural network is like clearly intended to sort of map how these systems are functioning onto how we think the brain is functioning and so on. And I think also like throughout time, like I think Aristotle compared reality to a trebuchet, and now we're kind of like comparing the human mind to this technology. I think there's also just like that's sort of a pattern of behavior that humans do, is sort of like use the most imminent technology to like describe reality or something. But it's also like there's so many assumptions built into this, like because we don't really know what consciousness is. And then we're like trying to describe these machines in terms of like how the human brain works. And like, I'm just kind of curious to get your thoughts on that.
Whether there's a risk to using these metaphors?
I guess, yeah. And like the accuracy of them and like how useful are they?
Yeah, I think that because the AIs operate in such a different way from people. I mean, just the fact that this machine can read every book that's ever been written. That's like tens of trillions of words that are out there. And then you have a conversation with it, and it appears that it chooses its words in the way that you would choose your words, but it does it in a completely different way than you would do it. So it's very easy to anthropomorphize it, to ascribe intentions to it or emotions, and that is very risky because it behaves in a way that appears to convey an emotion doesn't mean that it has that emotion, of course, or that if you it can talk to you in a way that mimics how a conscious person would talk to you, but it is definitely not evidence that it's conscious, right? You can train a system to pretend to be conscious pretty easily, and it could fool most people. That's like the famous Turing test, or it's very easy to fool a person to think that something is more intelligent than it is. So we do need to be careful about anthropomorphizing them too much. Yeah.
I also feel like I would prefer it if they didn't, like ChatGPT is such a classic example, if it didn't attempt to sound like a human being, both in terms of like the voice that they give it and its responses. It feels very strange to me that we are anthropomorphizing these things.
I mean, I think that they think that we'll make more money that way. They want to make the user experience more pleasant, and people like that. The people, as you said, like that, it helps you with your day-to-day life. People, paste the texts of the person they're dating to like figure out what to date them, what to text them next. It's like, so people just enjoy interacting with it in that way. I agree that's not necessarily a good idea, but it is more lucrative for them. I mean, that goes back to the question of the incentives. Like these are companies that want to make money. They're not trying to the most responsible thing necessarily.
Yeah, right.
I think with that, I'm going to open up to the house and then save my question for the very end. Yes.
Just exactly to that point, I think one of the takeaways I'm going to have from this piece is you put into a narrative structure, into a story that we can all kind of remember, this concept that the machine is wrong and it's going to make horribly dumb mistakes because it doesn't know what the F is happening. Just like it doesn't know what a story is, doesn't know any of this. And I thought I took away that the deconstruction of its really clear intents or the intentions it was making versus like the reality of what it was able to deliver. And I guess as a participant also, I felt like particularly inculcated in this process and feeling like, oh, I wanted it to like succeed and help it get the dinosaurs shape right, which I thought was another interesting element of like, we want these dumb baby machines to succeed like we want a real human being to succeed. So we give them, our information, we help them along. So yeah, thank you for that because I think it's going to help me remember that when ChatGPT is like going to be an answer, it's just completely like unaware of what the result is on the other end.
Right. Yeah, I think it's also maybe related to like our love of indeterminacy and like how that then like produces a new form of like chaos where opportunities arise because it's making all these like dumb calculations but then like the humans involved like somehow there's something like new that comes out of that, like they save it somehow.
First of all, thank you for the piece. And it's amazing. Also, congrats to all the actors. I talked to some. I'm really enthused. And I agree with Kay. It's such a brave for you to put us as an audience in your piece. However, I'm the one who the raw, and I raw before the kill. And then I remember that the prompt said, "Sorry, I don't understand. Can you understand what you mean?" And it's funny, of course. And I think I'm curious how much, and I think it's part of the performance. That's that's the kind of the high of it, right? Like the moment of improvising and comedy rhythm. I'm curious how much is automation. How much did you leave the room for improvisation? Do you have any rules or any prompt that you have for your performance each draft?
It's a really good question because I mean there's so much that can kind of there's a lot of room for improvisation just because things go wrong during the situation because the AI is making these decisions. And so we have a structure and a guardrail and everything set up, but I mean I don't know, as an example, there's a computer tracking or a pose tracking system that's happening all the time to make sure the actors are in shot and but then on the cameras themselves is there's a built-in in the firmware of the camera built-in AI body tracking mechanism, which we don't want because it has its own system to do that. And that came on at a certain point and started to decide where the shot was going. And so there were these two AI systems all of a sudden fighting each other. And we're sitting there it's literally out of our control at that point until I can go back in the terminal and disable this automated feature that keeps popping on for some reason. But I don't know, I mean, there's quite a bit of room for improvisation also. I mean, because there's so much affordance, the audience is making noises and the people on stage are making decisions that we didn't account for that then become incredible.
This question is for Cal. As a scientist working directly on AI, I'm curious if your beliefs about the present and or future capabilities of AI changed through collaborating on this.
Wow. So I would love to have collaborated on this piece, but my role here is to sit and chat with artists.
Participating, yeah.
Yes. Oh, you mean as an actor, as like sitting in the audience? You
Your
mean?
engagement with this piece of art, did that change the way you as a scientist
Oh,
work on AI?
I see. I see.
Of course.
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, I guess people really like to collaborate with AIs. I don't know. I mean, I think we know that from before also, but I am a little surprised by how eagerly people have adopted this technology. Um, and I guess here, well, there was a lot of social pressure. I feel like it would, the machine picked you and you refused to get on stage. Yeah. No, but still, I think it is in general something that I'm somewhat surprised by how eager people are to let this technology into their lives. And this I keep going back to this example of a friend of mine who showed me this how ChatGPT is deciding which text to send to this person that they're seeing. It's like how eager we are to just let to send our data to this company in Silicon Valley, our most personal data, and just let them do whatever they want with it. I guess that is something that I was not necessarily expecting.
I'm curious as artists about your relationship with the ethics of AI, particularly with how like these language models are trained on, books that people didn't consent to have into it. And this piece is also like remixing Jurassic Park, which is an existing piece of media, and using that text. And I think Tal said that so often when we think that AI is responding creatively to us, it's actually pulling from something that we just don't know about. So I'm curious about like, as artists and as creators, what your relationship is to that ethical question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure if I respect intellectual property in general. And so, and like I kind of like grew up like benefiting from the open source software movement and like try to contribute back. Like this project is in an open source repository. And I don't know, I feel like it's better to share. And so in some ways, I'm kind of enjoying that is happening in this weird way. I mean, even like, it's funny how Silicon Valley gets away with this stuff all the time. Like the iPod, the only reason that succeeded was because everyone had like torrented all of this music and they had like all these files on their computer and they're like, we're gonna capitalize on that now. And then of course that like got shifted around. Now there's whatever it's called, Apple Music and stuff. But yeah, now they've like kind of in a way like open sourced or like utilized all of this data that people can benefit from. And I mean like the real problem there, I guess, obviously is that like those companies are now making money from that act. So I think like, in my view, it's like we should just, nationalize these companies and like redistribute the profits, but.
Yeah, I agree. But I think like thinking about like property and kind of like how to respect property, I think like at least for me, I'm as well like thinking, okay, like whose property is it? And kind of like as well, like how are certain things produced? And like AI is not only kind of like trained by data, but as well by people. So kind of like what you described, like self-driving cars, or as well like this, we used, which is detecting is bodies is trained by mostly kind of like people in the global south, which are getting really badly paid. I was like in Nairobi a few months ago and was doing a project there with people who kind of like trained these AI systems. So and these AI companies working with subcontractors, and they get like really bad payments. And I think this is like something we should think about, kind of like how, kind of like what is this labor which stands behind it, which is not so prominent, because we think, okay, so when we encounter technology, this like flashy and wonderful and really promising, but then in the end, they kind of like is like an immense labor behind it, not only from people who are programming, but as well like people who are doing kind of click work and stuff like this. And I think this is like something I'm concerned about, or I think it's really important to talk about, and which is quite often forgotten or not so present as it should.
Why did you choose Jurassic Park?
I mean, as I said before, it came quite late, but when it then appeared, so it was really clear that this is the film, which has like so much, which already brings so much thoughts or like discussions we had before on the table, kind of like how do we interact and what is our relationship with technology. So kind of like this first encounter with the dinosaurs, I guess it's like this awe which we know as well when we encounter like science or technology. And then, as I said before, kind of like this attack is as well like something which is like so prominent in all these narratives about technology, so and about AI. So almost like in every film, so there's kind of like this tipping point. So it's like something we can all relate to, but then we thought it's like really interesting. It was really cool that there's not really robots, but dinosaurs, and like it's for us then to. It's a little bit more open and kind of like every one of you can kind of like think about it in a like individual and kind of can draw lines. Yeah.
So kind of like going off of that, because I was also interested about why you chose Jurassic Park. There are so many, I mean, movies in general that have chosen to make commentary on ethics and capitalism, but also about the use of AI and robots and stuff. I mean, you have like Ex Machina, or more recently like Companion or something. And all of those kind of have similar messages of like what could go wrong if you have access to this technology, or the wrong people have access to these things, and then capitalize off of them. So you guys were just explaining how this is similar to Jurassic Park in the way that it's, you know, your first interaction with something. Is that the message or experience that like you intended to have and just that, or is there like more of a message that comes from, you know, specifically using Jurassic Park, something that has really strong messaging about morals, but that messaging almost goes out the window because of the sheer like achievement of this movie?
I mean, for me, what's really important on a kind of like moral level of the story is just like the hubris of the people who created Jurassic Park, thinking that like there's nothing could go wrong and that they're just going to make money and everything's going to be amazing, and then like that being revealed to be like totally ridiculous, and that like private companies or individuals have like an undue amount of power and influence in this planet, and like, you know, had some, you know, group of people been able to be a part of that decision, maybe things wouldn't have gone wrong in Jurassic Park, you know, things. So for me, it's about like hubris and the tech companies that have an increasing amount of power in this world.
Yeah, I mean, even if I think this, the epilogue from the machine, from the robot, is like really cheesy and corny. So that's not our message. That's like the message from the robot. I think there's like a point when like because I'm not actually sure kind of like what is my message or kind of like what is my answer. I mean, I think we tackled like in this conversation about like things which are really interesting, things we're concerned about, so, but kind of like to really realize what is the message is probably kind of like a process and like works. Like for me, I understand them as well, doing the process of the work and then afterwards and kind of and see kind of like how we interact with them. So this is as well kind of like this experience to see you interacting with this work, having this conversation is like, for me as well, like a way to find out what the messages, and the messages can change as well. But I think, in this, I'm really happy about the conversation because I have the feeling it was really possible to tackle some thoughts and some concerns and to make it a little bit transparent from where this comes.
So I'm a little putting this question together in my mind. It's like, put it out there, so give me a moment here. But I'm curious, a couple of months ago, I went to an event with a number of jazz musicians. They had an AI device created a piece of music. And they said, tell us, was this created by human or machine? And all of us who were not professional musicians were like, I have no clue. One of the jazz musicians said, that's definitely AI. There was 3 others who said, I don't know either. My question is this. So as this technology advances, what, if any, concerns do you have about the economic disruption that this will bring? Because if you can get music that brings people to tears, and this one particular piece did that for me, sorry if I'm soft, but you know, I just wonder, well, why do I need to pay $20, $30 for a piece, for an album, or electronic music, or $75 to go to a live performance? And what does that do to the creative economy of all those people who live off of it?
I mean, I have two thoughts about this. One, I think we're not only going to music events or concerts or clubs or something like this to listen to really, really good music. We go there as well to listen to music with other people and having kind of like a social space. And I think this is like something we should think as well about it, and as well kind of like how can we integrate then technology kind of like in the social spaces, and as well kind of like how, and I think as well like hearing like seeing someone playing an instrument is like as well something we like to do, and like hearing, and that's maybe as well not that perfect as if it would be when a machine does it, but maybe that's as well alive. I think that's interesting. And yeah, what I said before, I think kind of like this, like technology will change and will be disruptive in all sorts of contexts that we have to think together, kind of like how we can protect weak people, or kind of like weak individuals, for example, artists, and kind of like how we can care about each other. I don't have like one answer, but I think I'm really trusting in moments like this, where kind of like people coming together in a space. Yeah.
And I have a question. I have one question for everyone. So there are people that argue that the humanist values of the Western Enlightenment have failed to a degree because we have ravaged the environment. And I just wonder if anybody here thinks that the ascendancy of the machine could mitigate this. Could there be a different kind of system that emerges that might not be so human-centered in a way, and maybe is there an upside to that?
Capitalist world, maybe not.
I think as well. So this is like something we should, maybe that's a good time to question as well, kind of like the economic systems we are believing in, and we are taking kind of like for granted, like a neoliberal ideology which says, okay, so higher, faster, and growing is kind of like that's what we're longing for when we are facing with like something which tends to be better than us. So maybe this as well could be a chance to have like a shift in our thinking about these things.
I wonder if the machine is as flawed as we are at the end, because we can either do good or bad, good or evil, right? And when you were talking about your AI systems were fighting and you couldn't control it anymore, the end result would also be this is for better or for worse. So I don't even know if we're that different in that.
Yeah, interesting.
Just for different motivations or different reasons, but I don't know. But I wonder. I think the machine at the end is just like us and can either go that way or that way. And we do the same.
Anybody else? Well, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you for all gathering in this room together and sharing some culture and some conversation.
Maybe that's a good. But we would really like to thank again our team. I hope I don't forget anyone. But that's Cameron, Dylan,
Kyle, Max,
Sam, Max,
Garrett,
Jen or Jess. That's-
Jesse, and Jen. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making this happening with us. And you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.